Jewelry and wall hangings. The most famous religious symbol of all time, the cross, has really been deduced to jewelry and wall hangings. We wear it around our neck, we buy it from Hobby Lobby and put it on our wall. But the cross was never meant to be a wall hanging or a piece of jewelry. The cross was meant to be a structure of torture and humiliation. The cross, with its massive structure, would line the roadways going into Rome and to major cities, and it would have bodies of rotting corpses on display to show the passerbys what happens when you break the law. And so as Jesus was going into his final days, someone who had been such a dissenter to the religious community and ultimately to the popular culture of Rome, the cross seemed a perfect fitting to humiliate him, to mock him, to destroy him. And as Jesus was finishing up his time on earth, we pick up the story in Mark chapter 15, starting in verse 20. And it says, "Then they led him away to be crucified. A passerby named Simon, who was from Cyrene, was coming in from the countryside just then, and the soldiers forced him to carry Jesus' cross. Simon was the father of Alexander and Rufus, and they brought Jesus to a place called Golgotha, which means place of the skull, aptly named. They offered him wine drugged with myrrh, but he refused it. Then the soldiers nailed him to the cross, not with small nails, but with thick spikes, and pierced his skin. They divided his clothes and threw dice to decide who would get each piece. They were already figuring out who got whose clothes. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucified him. A sign announced the charge against it. It mockingly read, "The King of the Jews." 2 revolutionaries were crucified with him, one to the right and one to the left. The people passing by shouted abuse, shaking their heads in mockery. "Ha, look at you now," they yelled at him. "You said you were going to destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days? Well then, save yourself and come down from the cross." The leading priests and teachers of the religious law also got into the humiliation and mocked Jesus. "He saved others," they scoffed, "but he can't save himself. Let this Messiah, this quote-unquote King of Israel, come down from the cross so we can see it and believe him," they mockingly cried. Even the men who were crucified with Jesus ridiculed him. See, the cross was meant to be a symbol of humiliation. But in these moments, though they mocked, though they scoffed, though they screamed, they played with his title, they called him the Anointed One with tongue firmly in cheek. The words of Jesus were not one of being humiliated. Really, the last words of Jesus started with, "Father, why have you forsaken me?" Knowing the pain and the hurt of being disconnected, even these words weren't filled with humiliation. They were filled with hope because of what would come. When he looked down at the people that put him on the cross, his words were not, "God, I need retribution now, strike these men dead." No, his "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And finally, his final words, before he breathed his last word, "It is finished." Not "I am finished," but "it is finished." Humiliation is finished. Shame is finished. See, Jesus wasn't about the cross being a symbol of humiliation. He was making the cross a symbol of reconciliation. See, at the moment that Jesus breathed his last, it said immediately in the temple, the curtain tore from the top to bottom, entering into the holies of holies, showing us that no longer was there a barrier between us and God, but know that we could enter in freely because of what Christ did on the cross. See, the cross is not meant for jewelry and wall hangings. It is not a symbol of some religious code. No, it is our pathway of reconciliation to God himself. As Jesus breathed his last and said, "It is finished," we can now breathe with freedom and say, "It is finished."